So Star Wars has been doing pretty well on the channel over the past month, and I wanted to bring you some more. In today's video, I will be going over who I believe to be the top 10 most powerful Jedi in Star Wars canon, so no Legends characters in this one. And just as a note, I will not be detailing every single feat, statement, and all of my logic and reasoning for every single placement. While I will explain, there's usually a lot more to say, but with a ranking video, I'm trying to just hit the highlights and move on, or we'd be here forever. Some of these characters I already have entire videos on, and some I plan to make 20 to 30 or even 40+ minute videos on in the future to give you everything that I know about them. If you can't stand the sequel trilogy, you hate the High Republic despite not even reading it, or are very thin-skinned about women being strong, I don't know, maybe skip this one. For all the normal people out there, these are the 10 most powerful Jedi in Star Wars. Avar Kriss was a Jedi Master of the High Republic and the Marshal of the Starlight Beacon. Widely renowned for her ability to sense Force connections and bridge the thoughts of Jedi across the universe while simultaneously strengthening the bonds of the Jedi, she is stated to be legendary, a paragon of the Order, and the best of the best during her era, that era again being the High Republic. The Jedi were at the height of their power during this era, and Avar being at the top of the heap during this time would by default make her a powerful Jedi worthy of consideration for anyone's list. During her time, she was shown to be relative, if not slightly above, a dark side amped Elzar man who could toss around entire islands. She could eliminate dark side influence where other masters could not. She, along with Elzar, was able to form storm clouds with the Force, causing it to rain. She could reconnect Jedi to the Force who had completely lost their ability to do so, and through the Song of the Force could track every action of all the Jedi in a single sector and coordinate their actions single-handedly. We have an entire phase left to go in the High Republic Initiative, and Avar will only get more impressive as we move into Phase 3, and I cannot wait to see what she and the other Jedi do to potentially move up higher on this list. The Chosen One, who of course becomes more powerful than nearly everyone on this list, but that is after his turn to the dark side. While he's a Jedi, things are a bit different. By the end of the Clone Wars, Anakin was a celebrity in the galaxy, one of the most famed generals of the Jedi Order, who was considered one of the most powerful Jedi ever by the time he defeated Count Dooku. Anakin famously had the highest midichlorian count of any Jedi in history and was considered to be the savior of the Jedi who would finally bring balance to the Force. There are numerous statements in guidebooks, official websites, and even trading cards that claim Anakin did become the most powerful Jedi in the Order, surpassing Yoda and Mace Windu. However, more recent sources, such as Skywalker Family at War, paint a clearer picture, telling us Sidious helped Anakin to surpass Windu and Yoda, meaning he did so once tapping into the dark side and becoming Darth Vader, despite not having his suit just quite yet. This is also sort of supported in universe by various characters like Yoda, who sent Obi-Wan to duel Anakin instead of Sidious, as Obi-Wan would be no match for the Sith Lord, as well as Sidious himself, who tells Yoda that Anakin will become more powerful than either of them, meaning that Anakin was not at the level of Yoda or Sidious just yet. Not sure why Sidious, the most powerful Force user alive at the time and master of the dark side of the Force, would need to lie about this or be unable to properly gauge his apprentice's strength even across the galaxy. Count Dooku, for instance, could sense Savage growing in power during the Clone Wars, and Dooku isn't close to Sidious's mastery of the Force, and Savage wasn't close to Anakin's power. While Anakin was more than a match for Obi-Wan, his conflict held him back and didn't allow him to take down his master easily as he should have. Additionally, Obi-Wan knew everything about Anakin's fighting style, so someone equal to Obi-Wan without that advantage likely loses to Anakin, even with the conflict. But that's not to downplay Anakin at all. He's on the list of the 10 most powerful Jedi of all time for a reason. Millions of Jedi throughout history, and he's one of the few who attained power beyond belief. Of course, Anakin at his full potential would blow anyone on this list out of the water, other than maybe his descendants at their full potential. Anakin was chosen by the Father to take his place and literally keep the light and dark side in Ballas on Mortis after all, and while there, Anakin showed us that he was up to the task. Anakin's skill was also renowned within the Order. Of course, he could duel on the level of Count Dooku, one of the most skilled lightsaber wielders ever. Anakin is called a peerless lightsaber duelist, and he's stated to wield a lightsaber like no other before him, which is supported by the Jedi of the past. Anakin's lightsaber perfectly complemented his style and allowed for more powerful swings than others, which also allowed him to take advantage of his unique skill set and incredible power. Even Elzar Mann, one of the most ingenious Force wielders of the High Republic, was impressed with its design, claiming he'd never seen anything like it. After becoming Darth Vader, Skywalker's power increased dramatically, but his time as a Jedi had come to a close. So I have to place the Jedi Knight, Anakin Skywalker, here at number 9. The Master of the Order is one of the strongest Jedi ever, obviously, and is constantly given statements by characters in-universe and out of it that he is indeed the most powerful in the Order during the Clone Wars. While he was rivaled by Anakin, who has similar statements, I believe that Mace was a bit more consistent across the board, despite the debate being close between Yoda, Anakin, and Mace. And you can back whoever you'd like in the debate between these three and make a solid case, but no ties on this list, and I believe Mace Windu has the edge. Jedi Master on-show states Mace was especially brutal and dangerous. Jedi Knight Iskat Akaris considered Mace and Yoda to be the two most powerful Jedi. Ochi of Bestoon, a famed Jedi hunter who had killed many throughout his time, thought that going after Mace was a suicide mission. Darth Sidious thought Mace could be the Jedi's greatest warrior and most powerful Force adept. Risa Mano, who was obsessed with learning of the Jedi Order's most powerful members, considered Mace Windu to be top 5 all time. Even Anakin suggested Mace was more powerful than Yoda. He's called the most powerful Jedi in Brotherhood. Star Wars author Matt Owens calls him the greatest Jedi warrior. He and Yoda are called two of the greatest Jedi ever in Skywalker Family at War. StarWars.com refers to him as the greatest champion of the Jedi. He's stated to be the Jedi Council's greatest battlefield general and warrior. The fact files say his power was on par with Yoda, and there are various sources claiming that he was the greatest duelist, with others saying that he was second only to Yoda. So I mean, I would put him definitely in the top 2, argument for top 1. Regardless, there is a mountain of evidence to show that Mace Windu is the most powerful Jedi during the Clone Wars, not to mention he invented his own fighting style of a pod, wherein he could tap into the dark side without succumbing to it. He had so much Force control that he could wield the light side and the dark side with perfect balance, giving him the edge in nearly any situation, including his duel with Sidious, where he soundly defeated the Sith Lord, who was not holding back to let Mace win, which may have helped him turn Anakin. No, there are dozens of statements which blatantly tell us that Master Windu defeated Sidious fair and square. Alright, so Seer is one of those characters that I do have an entire video on, which I highly recommend watching, but the long and short of it is she nearly defeated Vader. In fact, she came closer than anyone before her to ending Vader's reign of terror. Vader had surpassed both Anakin's skill and power by this point, so Seer being above Anakin the Jedi Knight and Mace Windu, who was rivaled by Anakin, makes perfect sense. While there are naysayers out there claiming Vader only nearly lost because he wasn't taking her seriously honestly, from the start, I partially agree. Despite Vader acknowledging that she had grown stronger, Vader was not going all out from the beginning. He was playing with her until he realized he could not really afford to do that anymore. The Sith Lord does this often, to the point where his master publicly admonishes him for it. However, this doesn't mean Seer isn't relative to Darth Vader. Having some burning rubble toppled on top of Vader really isn't going to weaken him at all. Vader had held up an entire city's weight of water, torn open the door to the dark side, causing multi-continental earthquakes, battled his master who can control the power of 1,000 Death Stars. Some burning data disks and some bookshelves aren't really going to faze him. If you think so, you should probably start, reading and watching more Star Wars to learn just how powerful Vader is, or, watch my near hour-long breakdown of his power over time. Anyway, Seer is just blatantly comparable to Darth Vader, who is more powerful than Anakin, so here she is at number 7. For decades, fans have considered Yoda to be the most powerful Jedi in the history of the Order. Even back when the original trilogy was all that the fans had, Yoda had the respect and mystique of a once powerful Force user. He has multiple statements of being the most powerful Jedi of the Clone War era, along with Mace and Anakin, while in-universe and Word of God statements suggest Yoda is more relative to Mace Windu than far above him. We know he was at his peak of power during the High Republic, so we will be considering that apex for this list, which is why he's 2 spots higher. During the High Republic, the Jedi were all at their most powerful consistently across the board, as I mentioned with Avar Kriss, but the other masters of the era admitted that the Grand Master was the most powerful of the Jedi Council. During the Clone War, Yoda was hailed as the greatest lightsaber duelist, putting him above the likes of Mace Windu, Anakin Skywalker, Count Dooku, and even Darth Sidious. While Sidious eventually defeated Yoda in their battle, Yoda actually won the duel, disarming the powerful Sith Lord off-screen. In his duel with Count Dooku, the skilled Darth Tyrannus was getting handled with ease, and he knew that he could not defeat Yoda in the Force or in a duel. Despite the bravado that he showed in front of his former master, the Count had to flee to avoid certain death. The Grandmaster was respected for centuries by each and every generation of Jedi who, whatever their title or whatever their station, understood the overwhelming power that Master Yoda wielded. Once the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka would eventually surpass her former master. Ahsoka is relative to Darth Vader during the time of Star Wars Rebels, and as we already mentioned previously, Vader had outclassed his skill and power that he had as Anakin by this time. Ahsoka is able to go blow for blow with Vader, and Dave Filoni tells us that the only 2 people in the galaxy who would even be a match for her at this time would be Vader or Sidious. While Ahsoka lost to Vader, she was at a disadvantage. The two were dueling on a dark side Force nexus, and its natural dark side power would amplify the power of Vader while they were there, not to mention that Vader has the natural ability to poison the Force around him, which makes it difficult for light side users to utilize the Force. So Ahsoka could have possibly even surpassed Vader, but could not overcome the amp that he had while on Malachor. Not to mention that she was able to briefly battle and hold off Darth Sidious himself, who dwarfs the power of his Sith apprentice throughout the reign of the Empire. Yeah, Rey Skywalker.
I know you're mad. Hey, stay salty, babe.
But I can't really explain Rey without spoiling who is number 3. So let's talk about the last son of the Skywalker bloodline, who I will have like a 40-minute long video on eventually, so subscribe to see that as soon as it drops. Ben, being the son of Leia and the grandson of Anakin, made him an incredible Force prodigy. It's outright stated that Ben was Luke's most promising apprentice, and if you want to include Grogu in that statement, it's a pretty exceptional one, considering that after the destruction of the second Death Star and the demise of the Emperor, the remnant of the Empire was convinced that they could not find a being with a higher midichlorian count than Grogu. When Ben was at the tender age of 16, Luke could feel the power radiating off of his nephew at all times and believed Ben would become as powerful as he was. Luke could feel the power in him. It was a beautiful flower growing inside his Padawan, waiting to blossom into something wonderful. Sometimes Luke thought Ben would one day be as powerful as he was. The Skywalker legacy ran deep. Under Snoke's tutelage, Kylo grew immensely in both power and skill. Snoke trained him to become a master of attack, and Sidious blatantly states that Snoke trained Kylo well. By the time of the sequel trilogy, Kylo was a fully fledged dark-side user and had possibly already surpassed his grandfather's immense power. Quote, Luke had registered nothing beyond his nephew's presence when he'd found him with Rey back on Ahch-To. Now he blazed in Luke's sense of the Force, almost radiant with power. It was the kind of power Luke had foreseen for him, first as a near-infinite promise, then later as an equivalent peril. The power was fed by emotions so strong they seemed to almost pollute the Force around Kylo. Rage poured out of him, a near-malignant cruelty, a lust to destroy everything around him, to blot it out and erase it. So if we combine the two quotes that I just mentioned, Luke thinking that Ben would one day be as powerful as he was, and then later realizing that Ben had attained the power that Luke had foreseen for him, you can see where we're going here. Ben reaching Luke's power isn't just supported by Luke, but Sidious and Snoke as well.
Darkness rises and light to meet it. I warned my young apprentice that as he grew stronger, his equal in the light would rise. Skywalker, I assumed. Wrongly.
And after relinquishing the dark side and turning back to the light, Ben became even more powerful just as Seer had done years prior. So Ben would be at worst just below the level of his uncle Luke, and at best more powerful after shedding his confliction and accepting the light side. Confliction is like the worst thing for a Force user. As we mentioned earlier, it's what brought Anakin from Mace Windu and Yoda level to below Obi-Wan. Ben's conflict took him from Jedi Master level to losing to Rey and being unable to contend with his uncle's Force projection.
Killed Han Solo. When the moment came, I didn't hesitate.
And look at you. The deed split your spirit to the bone. You were unbalanced. Bested by a girl who had never held a lightsaber. You failed!
Now, back to Rey. She is part of a dyad with Ben, and when they fight, they literally become more powerful and they learn abilities from one another without ever practicing or using them. Sidious tried for years to forge a dyad with his apprentices and coveted that power. By their final confrontation with Rey's grandfather, the two should have been very close in total power, mostly due to the dyad, but also from Rey's training under Leia, who was a Jedi Master as well. I give Ben the nod as he was able to rise without assistance after being force drained by Sidious, while Rey needed the help of the Jedi of the past. Porter was a Jedi during the High Republic, when again the Jedi were at the peak of their power. During this time, Porter was considered to be the best, and no one was even close, including Grandmaster Yoda, who was also at his peak during this time. So Porter would completely dwarf the power of the strongest Clone War era Force users. Mace Windu, Yoda, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Dooku, even Sidious would be no match for the blade of Bardada. Even the most powerful Jedi of the High Republic were completely baffled by his skill and power. Some couldn't even comprehend it. After hundreds of years, Porter had amassed tens of thousands of hours of lightsaber combat and practice, and was simply better than Yoda, who was the greatest swordsman of the Clone War era, and again was at his peak during the High Republic. We will only learn more about Porter as the universe expands, but even with the limited knowledge that we have of him, he's easily in the top 5. Grandmaster Luke Skywalker is the most powerful Jedi of all time. We already discussed how powerful Ahsoka was, on par with Darth Vader, who had far surpassed Anakin. Well, before he even opened his temple, Ahsoka claims that there is no place in the galaxy safer than with Luke, kind of conceding that he's more powerful than she is. Luke defeated Snoke, who had equal mastery to Sidious in the dark side of the Force. Just for reference, Sidious was the most powerful Sith of all time as the lineal heir of the Rule of Two. Even Vader at his most powerful was nowhere near his master. Sidious even saw a vision of a possible future wherein he was successful at turning Luke to the dark side. In this vision, Luke was able to easily defeat Sidious, who would be even stronger than he was at the end of Return of the Jedi. This would mean if Luke would have turned to the dark side, he would have far surpassed his father, and that's only talking about his dark side power. While it was a vision, it was a possible future shown to Sidious if Luke were to be turned, and a likely indication of his full potential in the dark side, or, the light side, as the two opposing forces are equal. Meaning Luke's potential was far beyond Sidious, the most powerful Force user ever, which is supported by Luke's ability to demolish Snoke, who was equal to Sidious in Force mastery, and the fact that Snoke was terrified of Luke's return, and as he was Sidious's mouthpiece, I'd say that the Sith Lord was terrified of Luke returning as well, and the Grand Master would be more than a match for a fully restored Sidious. Luke is so powerful that it requires intense concentration to just simply hold someone in place with the Force without killing them. Think of him like Superman, who has to hold back this immense power at all times because even the most mundane things could obliterate everything and everyone around him. At times, Luke felt his own power was too immense, despite being a Jedi Master. Even with all this power, he still had untapped reservoirs, potential waiting to be awakened. His force projection is one of the most difficult and powerful techniques ever used. The effort of doing it just briefly would have killed Rey, but when Luke was her age, he did it accidentally. Even after becoming much older, having not used the Force in years, Luke was still able to project his consciousness across the universe to duel his nephew, and despite Ben being an expert with the blade, Luke was better in this instance. The Grandmaster's skill with a lightsaber is so all-encompassing that it is described as second nature, as easy as it is for you or I to just breathe. So that is my top 10 most powerful Jedi in the history of Star Wars canon. Honestly, I think Ben Solo, Porter Engle, and Luke Skywalker at 1, 2, 3 is a pretty debatable topic in and of itself, with all of the information that we know about Ben, with all the statements of Porter just being completely above someone like peak Yoda, where he's not even in the conversation with Porter, and then of course Luke with just all of this incredible power that scared him a little bit. It's all pretty intense, and the characters lower on the list, such as Anakin and Mace, I also think it's a pretty fun debate. But let me know down in the comments what you think. What is your top 10? Let's try to keep it civil, please, if at all possible. There's no reason to, spew hate over some disagreements or things that you may not like as much as other things, or characters you dislike more than others. That's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Really do appreciate it. Remember, subscribe. It does really help us out. And remember the motto, it's the Jedi Order over everything. And I'll see you guys next time.